To explain the difference between simple and compound interest, we first must discuss how money works and what money is used for in this problem of simple and compound interest. First, you have something called a principal, which is the money you start out with before you start the compounding interest or the simple interest process. Now, it's just the amount of money you have to put into an investment vehicle, and then you get a rate of return based on your interest along with your principal back. That's a lot of definitional words I must define. Principal is the money you start out with that you put into your investment vehicle to invest with. Rate of return is the percentage gain that is added on top of your principal. So let's say you have $100 and you invest it into the vehicle. If you have a 5% rate of return, then you get $5 back. But not just the $5 back. That's just the $5 in interest. You also get the $100 of your principal back at the end of the investment. So, in this example, if you start off with a principal of $100 and you had a rate of return of 5% over one period, T equals 1 unit of compounding, then you have $5 of total interest along with your $100 of principal returned to you. What is the total amount of money you have at the end of the process? It's simply your total principal, $100, plus 5, which was the amount of interest that you earned on your money when you gave it up to be invested in various products. Basically, it's a way of making money off of money, where you don't use the money for a given amount of time. Someone else uses the money, they make money off of that, and they give you back a portion of the profits. It's like a war bond in that sense, in that you give $100 today and then you get $200, say 20, 30 years down the road. But we need to discuss our terms very carefully, because where people trip up in these compound and simple interest problems isn't in the intuition of how to calculate or even the mathematics. It's confusing variables in the equations that you need to figure out to find your answer. There are 3 key terms. Principal, the money you started out with. We've mentioned that several times. Number 2, rate of return, which is just a percentage of your principal. And time. Time isn't an amount of years or amount of months or amount of days. It's more vague than that. It actually is described in the contract. Time tells you how many time cycles you go through in your compounding. For example, this is the best example I can think of. If you compound every month at 1%, and this isn't realistic, but it's easier math. If every month you compound 1%, then at the end of the year, you have compounded 12 times. You've gone through the calculation of compounding your interest or calculating your interest and giving it to the bank account, say, and you do that 12 times. Because there are 12 months, and every month you compound and you add that value to what's being in the bank account, the money. So, I'm rambling a little bit, but I'll shorten it up a little. Principal is what you started out with. Rate of return is what is promised to you as additional money on top of the principal after a given amount of time units. And in each time unit, you compound again. Simple interest says you compound off the original principal. So, if you have $100 and you compound at 5% with simple interest, then you compound that, let's say, 10 times. Then 5% off of the original $100. When you get the 5% 10 times, is $5 10 total times. So you get $5 plus $5 plus $5, all the way till you get $50 of interest, or 5 times 10. So the total amount of money based on the simple interest calculation is $100 plus $50 of interest. These numbers aren't accurate to how the financial markets work because we don't decide numbers out of the blue. They're dependent on the needs of the economy at the moment. But for the purpose of this mathematical problem, that is how it works. Compound interest, conceptually, does not compound and calculate the amount of interest based on a percentage of the original principal. What it does is after every, say, month of a time cycle, it compounds on the new total. So if you have $100 and you compound at 5% in the first cycle, you get $105. And if you use compound interest, you multiply you add another 5% to the $105 instead of the $100. And the way you represent this is you do P, principal, times, open parentheses. No need for parentheses. It's principal times 1.05 raised to, say, the 12th. That would represent, and that would be the calculation they would use in order to give you a compound interest rate and gives you your total net value that's given back to you by multiplying your principal, which is 100, plus times 1 plus your percentage, which is 1 plus 0.05 or 1.05. That 1.05 raised to the total amount of time cycles, which in this case is 12. The key is to remember these equations for your math problems. If you need to learn this in the adult life of how to invest in things properly, it's important to do your calculations accurately, because finance is a promise, it's a contract of I give you money now, you give me more money later based on our agreement. And it's a very complex mathematics because there's a lot of difficult situations which change, etc., etc. Now, simple interest would be principal open parentheses 1 plus your rate of return, all divided by time, all multiplied by time. You can look these equations up. I might have misspoken, but you can memorize these equations. You have to understand when the variables in the word problems represent what they represent. But P stands for the money you start out with, to repeat myself at the end. P starts with the money, P is principal, which is the money you start out with. R is your rate of return over, and T is the amount of time cycles. Now, they might trip you up and say you have, let's say, a rate of return of 5%, but it is compounded every month. It is calculated every month. And we'll have to discuss that later once I have a word problem in front of me. I do apologize.